provide permeability, which means that they would be accessed by the public during social hours to make sure that there's access to the beach. But otherwise, unsociable hours would be closed off to the public. This also shows how the current scheme sits in terms of its physical form. And one of the key elements here to take account of is that there's been a further revision beyond what was previously considered. Other slides show how the building envelope is made up. What's shown on this slide is how the top floor, the uppermost floor, which is set back from the elevations, would be less visible from ground views, has been further reduced in terms of the overhang on that top floor. And other views on other slides will show how that would sit. But it's one of the revisions that's been made since the previous committee meeting. At that committee meeting, just to recap on some of the initial revisions that were made, this is the northernmost portion of the building. So taking account of the top right-hand corner of the screen, this is a cut through from the northernmost portion nearest to the harbour. And it shows a reduction in the uppermost floor. So that was reduced and omitted altogether. And then the top floor being set back. What this shows is the previous overhang that's now been reduced. So where this would appear in views, it's now been reduced further and would be less visible from surrounding areas. Another cut through the building, this time through the centre. There's 3 blocks through the central block and a significant reduction in the built form, massing, to reduce the visual appearance of the building in terms of the massing and silhouette, and to break up the building. So this now allows for the middle section to be seen as 2 buildings. This slide shows a revision to be made since the last committee meeting. It shows that the uppermost floor on the southernmost portion of the building, so part of the building furthest from the harbour, would be set back on the uppermost floor. Set back just like the other parts of the building, reduced and set back away from the other parts of the elevation. So this shows the previous form, and this shows how it will be set back, and reduction in balcony space as well. So less space for occupants to stand out, sight, and have a view towards neighbouring properties. This view also shows parts of the building how photovoltaic solar array will be on the flat roof of the building. Now on to a revision to be made to the lowest floor of the building, lower ground floor, and in particular this part, so this section of the building. This shows the before on the left-hand side and the now proposed lower ground floor. It is for a set aside for parking and other facilities required for the building to run properly, including utilities and plant. And this part is a relocation of plant. So using some of the beach area to excavate to put that plant where that will be now made available for parking. So it has reduced, it has increased the number of parking spaces now being proposed. In total, set against the former 70 car parking spaces, there will now be 75 car parking spaces proposed in the entirety of this scheme. There's been a reduction in the number of units, and this slide shows where that is made. It's not through reduction in the built form specifically. It's a reduction in terms of the number of units by conjoining some of those units. What that does is reduce from 137 apartments to 128, and now since the last committee to 126. What it would also do is reduce the likely occupancy of the building, bearing in mind that predominantly, given this is a care facility, it is intended that the majority of these units will be single occupancy. with a visitor accommodation, but likely that that would be a maximum of 2 persons per unit. This view shows the now proposed view from the urban side to the non-seaward side, and it takes into account the revisions to the southernmost portion of the building, the lowest part of the building. The other views show how this building would relate to the built form surrounding it and to the Martello Tower, a historic asset. This view and others on the subsequent slides show how the top floor is set back from the main elevation. These are other cut-throughs of the building showing how those elements would relate to each other. Now, focusing on the view from the seaward side, an important view because it shows the completeness of this urban form and what the vision of the Solomon Harbour SPD outlined is that this is an unfinished urban form, and the building on this site would finish urban form, as has always been anticipated. It's also very important because this is a gateway location, and what policy is directing here is a landmark building. A landmark building that delivers high quality architecture, but also a building of some scale, because it completes the edge of that urban form, and therefore is prominent in view. This slide is a visual representation of the initial scheme prior to the committee's involvement and recommendations and requests. It shows the scheme and the prior proposed scale. It also shows how the scheme was related in terms of the heritage asset. And this is the revised scheme as would be shown in relation to the heritage asset. It shows how the building is being broken down. It shows how the form has been almost entirely changed, with particular emphasis on the balconies. What I have to caveat with some of these slides is that these haven't been updated to reflect the reduction in the overhang, which will be further reduced from what we can see here. So there hasn't been time to update all these views to show that this actually will be a less of a silhouette than shown here, so the reduction is to what we can see. Another view showing how this was previously proposed in relation to the nearest neighbours, how that's been reduced. Reduction in the floor, again, caveat to say this uppermost floor would be reduced further in terms of the overhang, so would be perceived less from ground floor level. Running through the other elevation treatment changes, there's been a wave design introduced, a clamshell approach, that shows that breaks down the building form and provides more interest to the elevation treatment, particularly in terms of the balcony spaces. But also, there has been a change in terms of the materials. This is the previously proposed elevation treatment on the urban side, and this shows a change in some of those materials, making materials lighter, using buff brick, but also lighter reinforced concrete elements which are very hardy in this sea environment. These views show how the building will sit in terms of the rhythm of buildings facing the harbour. And as can be seen here, there is a strong rhythm in terms of the more vertical elements of the built form context. And that this building, as proposed, would complete and be sympathetic with that rhythm. Moving back to the original proposal, before members had become involved and provided their recommendations and concerns, this is the resulting scheme. Again, reduced in terms of some of the overhang on the upper floor, so this would be reduced in terms of its visual appearance, which shows that the building has been significantly changed by the applicants, taking heed of the comments made by the members previously. This is an updated visual, and it shows how the building would sit in terms of its neighbours. It also takes into consideration two things that I've mentioned previously in terms of physical alterations to the elevations and the overhang, so there will be less overhang here, tucked further back in against the building, and this also shows the elevational changes on the southernmost block. This aerial photo has been provided with a montage, so you'll see this is a view of the harbour. And the montage is where the site lays and shows the building as it would sit against that context. And what this demonstrates and clearly shows is that the scale here is very much in keeping with the prevailing scale of the majority of the vicinity, but also actually that it is lesser in height than some other buildings within the harbour that can be seen within this view. And a more focused view on that aerial shot shows how this would relate to its immediate surroundings, including the buildings on the urban side, but also the heritage asset of the Martello Tower. This view also shows how this would mark the gateway to the harbour. It shows how this would be a landmark building. And it shows how it relates to not only the urban form, but also the extant commission that started to be built. One further slide to show what has been done with regards to the landscaping. This scheme would develop and deliver a high quality landscape scheme that would be open to the public. So we provide a community facility with ecological and biodiversity gains. It would also include children's play space, and that has been changed in terms of its location and improved. Previously, the children's play space was proposed on the northern side of the building, on the western side of the building. It's different orientation, excuse me. Western side of the building, and on the seaward side, the eastern side, now would contain the play space and would be high quality, sensory experience for children, and would be open to the public. This view also shows that there is a commitment to deliver against King Charles III's coastal route, which runs in front of the site, but has a portion that connects that route with the rest of the route throughout the harbour. What we haven't mentioned so far in this presentation is the other things that will be delivered on the ground floor of this building, the upper ground floor, and that is ancillary facilities for the residents of the building predominantly, but also open to the public. And they include cafe, restaurants, for occasional use, but also for community facility that could be bookable by the community and used by the community. I'm going to finish my presentation and hand over to members just by going through some very important parts in terms of how officers consider all applications, including this. We are required as decision makers, in this case the planning committee, to determine applications in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. That is the starting point for decision making. An important consideration here is the National Planning Policy Framework, and that is a collection of paragraphs which hit on lots of different areas, but the one that is the focus here is paragraph 11, and that outlines the presumption in favour sustainable development. It includes in plan making, but also in decision taking. And as can be seen on this slide, this is an excerpt from that paragraph. It includes that decisions should be made by approving development proposals that call an up-to-date development plan without delay. I can confirm that we don't have an up-to-date development plan in Eastbourne. And therefore, where there are no relevant up-to-date relevant development plan policies or the policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date, the presumption is to grant planning permission. That's the starting point here for determination of this application. There are some caveats, because it outlines that the planning permission should be granted unless, firstly, the application of policies in this framework protect areas or assets of particular importance provides a clear reason for refusing the development proposed. The NPPF provides a footnote that talks about heritage, that talk about the assets and the areas, and it includes in this case heritage assets and areas of risk of flooding. Those are the two that are relevant to this application. And we'll come on to how they are considered in plan balance. The second part of paragraph 11D talks about any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against this policies in this framework taken as a whole. It is important to note that there are a number of benefits to this application, and they are outlined in the officer report, and they're very clear for members to consider. Going back to the assets, we know that one of the assets is areas of risk of flooding. We know there are no flooding issues here because the lead local flood authority is happy with what is being proposed and that there is no significant flood risk. More significantly here is the impact on the heritage asset. And the NPPF goes on to say that where a development proposal will lead to a less than substantial harm to the significance of designated heritage assets, the harm should be outweighed against the public benefits, should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including where appropriate securing its optimum viable use. We have a response from Historic England, and it classes that they have confirmed there's no objection to this application, but they have said that there is a less than substantial harm, so there is a small harm by the presence. And then outline specifically what that harm is. And they said that any building on this site would lead to a less than substantial harm, which means and includes the extant permission. A building of scale, any scale, will have less than substantial harm. What the Historic England have said is that it's less than substantial harm in this case and should be considered against paragraph 2 in the NPP. Just to conclude my presentation, I'm going to look at the benefits, and these are the benefits that are outlined in the officer recommendation. Delivering sustainable development of an underused brownfield site within the built-up area of the borough, something that we seek in all cases when it comes to development. First and foremost, to look at brownfield before greenfield. Delivering high-quality architectural design to this gateway location. Delivering housing that meets an identified need, but also within a predominantly residential area. And that is defined in our policies map. Delivering community facilities in line with adopted policy, delivering the biodiversity net gain, and delivery of high quality public open space, including children's play space. So, I would like to conclude the presentation by saying that there is a recommendation for approval of this application. Weighing those planning balance, those considerations in the planning balance, and the planning balance is fully set out in the officer report for members to consider. The recommendation here is to delegate this application. First and foremost, to see out the consultation on ecology with East Sussex County Council, and to make any necessary provisions resulting from that.